go ahead and get started. We may have some more people jump on over the next couple of minutes. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our second community workshop for Ezell Park. My name is Bert Lynn. I'm the Capital Planning Division Director. Before I move forward, I wanted to give Lee Jones, Director of Mecklenburg County Park and Recreation, an opportunity to say a few words.
Thank you, Bert, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to our community workshop and master plan review for Ezell Park. I've been associated with this project, I'm almost ashamed to say, but happy to say, for going on 17 years now. It's been, in the wings for a while, and it's been a long time coming. And I'm so glad at the level of participation and enthusiasm that we have for this project. So I want to thank Bert and his team working in concert with our consultants and with our partners at Asset Facility Management, with our Park and Recreation Commission, our staff, and members from our Board of County Commissioners to make this a reality. So thank you, Bert. I'm going to hand the reins back over to you at this point.
All right. Thank you, Lee. So as Lee mentioned, we have some exciting updates on the project to share with everybody tonight. We had over 80 attendees at our initial workshop in October. And if you can remember this far back, it was almost a year ago to the day that we were supposed to have our initial workshop that was postponed at that time due to inclement weather. Since our meeting in October, we've received some great response from residents on the project through our website at publicinput.com. To date, we've had over 1,600 site visits and received over 1,200 responses and comments, which is fantastic. Our team has worked hard to take the input that we received through our initial workshop and the responses online to develop 2 concept plans that we'll review this evening. This meeting is being recorded and will be available to rewatch and share for those who are unable to attend tonight through the project's website on publicinput.com, and we'll post that link here in the chat in a few minutes. Before we get started, I wanted to walk you through some of the features of our virtual meeting platform in case you haven't spent a lot of time on Zoom over the past year. It's important that everybody stays muted throughout the presentation. You'll notice a button shaped like a microphone on the bottom left of your screen, or it may be in a little drop down at the top of your screen. Make sure that there is a red slash through the microphone, which indicates that you are muted. There will also be an opportunity to ask questions at the end, either by unmuting or using the chat feature. We encourage you to turn on your video so that we can see you. We know that isn't as nice as being able to meet in person, but we do want to see your faces if you're okay with that. You can turn your camera on by using the start video function on the bottom of your screen. If you have questions or comments throughout the presentation, please use the chat function. There's a button on the bottom of your screen to bring up the chat box there now. So let's test out the chat feature. Please type in your name, your zip code, and whether you attended the October workshop, you visited the public input site, or both for the project. I'll give you a minute to do that. I'm seeing some boths already. Ellen hadn't done either, but she's here tonight. Welcome, Ellen. All right, we've got some first timers, so that's great. So with that, I will turn things over to James Williams to introduce our project team.
Thanks, Bert. We are excited to be here on our site. And it has been, as Bert said, has been very well received. And if there was any way to put in some noise or for applause, we would do that, because we definitely appreciate your advocacy. And again, I'm James Williams, and I'm planner, Mecklenburg County Park and Rec, Capital Planning Division. And with me tonight, we have a great team that we'd like to keep you abreast of. And the design team is excited to bring tonight to you 2 master plan concepts. And those concepts, of course, have been over a period of time of us collaborating, getting information off the website, and information that came from our first virtual meeting. And we're excited about it because we have a good team that we put together, and the team is excited that they were able to take your information that was input and deliver it back to you. We got a lot to cover, so I want to get right to the design team and introduce them. First, we have David Booth. He was asset and facility management. He is our project manager. Then we follow that up with Stimmel, who is our lead design consultant, and they're represented by Emily and Dan. And then we want to go to Stitch, who are architects on this project, and we're glad to have them. And that's Pete Fowler and Adam Sebastian. So they round out the team, and very talented, and I'm very excited to have the opportunity to be able to work with them. Our agenda tonight is going to be, I think it's a full agenda because of the concepts, and we're going to go through those concepts. But first of all, we want to step back and recall some of the things that we had in the previous meeting. And one of those things was recall the park location so that everybody will know where the park is, some of the demographics and some of the things that are around the park. And then the next thing we would like to do is to review the public input responses after we define what a community park is. And that's very important for us to get the understanding of how Mecklenburg County Park and Rec in their service division of public recreation and how community parks fits within that service. And so we want to do that, and our lead consultants will take us through that. Now, when we get to reviewing the public information input, this will be where we go and we look at all of the data that we receive from all of the participation that we've had on the previous meetings. And then we get to the presentations of the 2 concepts. Our consultants will lead us through those 2 concepts, and we'll give you an opportunity to select at the end those concepts, which concept we want to take forth, rather, and also give you an opportunity to provide input on the concept. And a lot of times in these, it ends up being a combination of the concepts. And whichever one that comes out or whichever one we take forth, these are conceptual master plans at the time. And also, since they're master plans, they're going to sort of be phased master plans because we're looking at this as a total development of the park. And then we will go into this, after this interactive discussion of you selecting the concept, we will close out with an anticipated schedule because we always like to keep you updated on the schedule. And this is the project website, publicinput.com. Everything will be pushed to this site. You'll be able to review it. And I think a lot of you have already, got the hang of that and have been keeping up with us, as Bert had mentioned, how many views we've had. So we're really excited about that. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Dan.
Thank you, James. So welcome, everyone. Just wanted to give you a brief recap. We're not going to go through all of the site analysis that we did, that we went through on the last meeting, but this slide is showing park orientation, and in the sort of purplish outline that's shown on the map is the city limits of town of Mid Hill, and then the town limits of Matthews shown in yellow. To the south, we have Union County kind of grayed out, and then everything sort of north and west is city of Charlotte, Mecklenburg County. We've got rings around the park. The park sits in the center. It's that sort of square orange feature. And, last time we had looked at all the parks that are within the area, within 1 and 3 and 5 miles. I think let's slide on to the next one. So as James mentioned, we're going to go over the definition of what a community park is, just so we keep it in the framework of understanding about the size of this park and what its attributes are intended to be and how it's supposed to serve the citizens of the county. Generally, as a minimum, the parks are 20 to 100 acres in size. They're designed to serve a more localized area of the county, usually within a 15-minute drive, so 8 to 10 miles out. The amenities can be active or passive. They can be a combination of both, in fact. And active amenities, as you recall, we were calling those, say, fields and courts. Passive amenities, more walking trails, picnic shelters, and those kinds of things. As compared to regional parks, community parks tend to be smaller in quantity, size, and the amount of tournament play that happens on that park. And as with all community parks, Ezell Park will also have a required 100-foot buffer around the property to protect the neighbors as well. With that, we'll turn it back over to James. He'll speak to a review of the input data that we've received through the public input website, as well as the public meeting that we had recently.
Thanks, Dan. I've always wanted to say that survey says. So if I say that a lot, please bear with me. But this is information that we got off the website. And again, which as I said, which was very interactive. And it said that, Ezell Park will be, a community, a family, wellness. These are all sort of words that we take as design consultants and try to understand how to put that into a design language. And so we're really excited about a place to unwind, to get into nature, a place to take relaxing walks. And so that's our task, is to bring these things into, implementation on the field. And then we'll go to the next character. This is important because, again, this is a survey that was online, and we saw that passive recreation is 54%. And the other thing that's interesting about this is similar to our engagement that we did back in 2010. And of course, I wasn't there, and I'm sort of telling my age a little on this, but it says, and we look through all of our files and records, some of the same sort of connotation and feel for the site by the people that are close and around the site is still there. And I think it is a great standing to say too that sustainability is important on this project. And of course, we see the active recreation, how that was sort of 25, that was down, and then agrarian, more farm-based was 21%. But that was up on public input, and we had great participation to get that. Our next slide is, I don't have to say survey says here, but this is a word cloud, and it's important because the significance of the words that we heard. Again, these are things that we heard. Walking trails, oh, we heard that big. The ability to walk and also be able to walk and not have cyclists, coming up. So having a wider walk. Biking trails was important. We heard basketball, pickleball. Welcome center was important. And of course, we followed up with nature trails, and we cannot forget the community garden, which is well established there, and splash pads for the hot, humid summers. Next slide. And this is a lot of the chats. So we had a lot of chats, our first meeting, and we enjoyed that. And in fact, it prompted us to how do we respond to so many chats, but the chats are interesting, and we tried to capitalize some of those things that we heard. One of the things I think we heard at the end was concerns for traffic, and it generating a lot of traffic. The park actually generating, a significant amount of traffic. So that's something that we're taking into consideration in a serious sort of way to understand what we can do. Trails stood out. in the community garden, like I said, has to be no more ball fields. We heard that, no more ball fields. Adaptive and inclusive play. We've heard that, and actually we had some comments with a resident about how important it is to be inclusive. And we're definitely going to put that. We have certain standards that we apply to. And, you know, overall, we thought we heard and we tried to represent again, and we will try and continue to try to represent this into our design. And that's a part of tonight, is to make sure that we're still in contact with and that we are on the right path. And with that, I'll turn it back to Dan.
Thank you, James. So as we move into the presentation of the master plans, I want to make sure that you understand that we have two options here tonight that we're going to present to you. And each of the options has 5 slides. So give it some time, make sure that you're keeping an eye out and an ear out to make sure we're understanding that 5 slides go with each master plan. As James had mentioned, as I believe Bert also mentioned, that these are conceptual plans. They're not final plans. We have not written them in stone. We do anticipate gathering information from you tonight, and also again on the public input website to refine these plans. That input will go into developing a final plan. And as we all know, budgetary constraints and some other opportunities may arise, but at the end of the day, the plans will be phased in their construction. Another point here is that, as I mentioned, these are not final. They'll be updated and added to and refined as we move along. There was one other point, and I apologize. I think I just want to make sure that everyone understands that we've got 5 slides. So you will be able to vote on your preferred plan at the end of this session. You'll also be able to vote on your preferred plan at on the public input website. You will also have the opportunity to describe items and elements, program elements within each of the parks that you would prefer overall that may be included in the final plan as we merge these plans together. With that, I'll turn it over to Emily to walk us through the master plans.
Thanks, Dan. We're going to start with the overall character, the look and the feel that we really want Ezell Community Park to have. There's already so much beauty in the existing property out there. So the overall intent really in both options is to try and preserve and showcase this beauty to enhance what is already really there and play up its strengths and nod to the rural and agricultural history of the area. So we imagine natural looking and nature reflective splash and play components that really complement the natural landforms. Selective use of farm style fencing to create an edge between manicured and natural spaces. Beautiful but functional garden fencing. Open areas for space to play, unwind, and reset with your family. Quiet reflective spaces to relax. Small active zone for recreation, and lots of space to encourage the continuation of wildlife habitats. We'll go ahead to the next slide. We'll get into the overall master plan. So the plan elements in this option are arranged based on a typical solar orientation of the site amenities, with most of the amenities aligned generally in the north-south direction. The building's long axis is ranged east-west, which is to allow the natural daylight to enter the interior space. These opposing orientations, north-south and east-west, created a loose grid pattern of the program elements in this option. So in contrast to the grid pattern, an arced walkway was introduced as an organizing element within the core of the park. And the main park elements are start to unfurl from this sort of curved spine. And this is why we've nicknamed this option Unfurl. The walk drapes over the topography and is tied to the grid at compass ordinate points. And then the major program elements are kind of aligned with that. So to the west of that curved spine, which is plan left, the walk leaves the picnic shelter, which is on the ridge line, and begins to fall to the south and toward the low point of the core, where the walk intersects with an informal amphitheater. And then to the east at the high point of the site, the walk passes through the Welcome Center before it begins to unfurl into a themed splash pad to the north. The primary vehicular entrance utilizes the existing driveway from Mintwood Drive. In both scenarios, we are holding space for potential road improvements on Mintwood. This is going to be dependent on traffic impact analysis and their results, and then further discussions with the town engineer on what would really need to happen there. But we are planning that there will probably be some. Once you enter into the park, the drive snakes through the site toward the Welcome Center, distributing the parking spaces along the drive near each recreation activity for easy access. We are designating opportunities for agricultural elements and partnerships on the site for an orchard and or cultivated field so that we keep and enhance the quality of the property and its history. We are showing a small structure near the agrarian amenity, which would be for housing farm equipment or maintenance equipment, and the parking there that we're showing would be primarily for staff maintenance access of these amenities. It's not meant to be used by the park visitors. The wooded portion of the site would be preserved and utilized for hiking trails to provide interaction with nature, but continue to protect the habitats that may already be established there. And for those looking to just come and hike and get in nature, a small parking lot is provided for ease of access in this plan option. And if you switch to the next slide. On this slide, we have highlighted the different types of trails throughout the park. The proposed materials are based on the hierarchy of use or the wear and tear that they might receive, while also thinking about the overall experience. So we have a paved multi-use path along the frontage of the property. This would be 10 feet wide, and we have it weaving into the park and back toward the road so we can try and preserve the existing tree stands along the front of the property. We are also showing a signalized pedestrian crossing on Highway 51 that we will work with NCD and DOT to get that to happen so that we've got that connectivity. Pedestrian paths near the core of the park elements would be concrete sidewalks and 8 feet wide, and then trails that extend further into the park will continue with the 8 foot width, but will transition to a compacted crushed aggregate. So the surface is still stable and accessible, but you start to feel and hear that crunch as you move along from the structured developed area to the more natural area of the park, really trying to engage multiple senses. Then as you immerse into the woods, the trails would turn to a natural surface hiking trail, which would mainly just be pretty much a cleared path with boardwalks as needed in some of the lower wet areas on the property. And then we're showing a viewing dock on the edge of the pond for a quiet place for reflection. The pond's not huge, so it's really not big enough to get boats or fishing, and it's not deep enough for fishing. So this is our way of being able to interact with the size of pond that we have. And then if you switch to the next slide, we're gonna dive a little bit more into detail on the core area of the park where most of the amenities are. So we have the Welcome Center, which is sited along the ridge of the park near the highest point to allow for the vistas and capture the breeze in the summer. The building is oriented east-west, so the low sun in winter will help heat the building while the overhangs shade the building to help cool it in the summer. The southern building overhang opens up to the proposed community garden expansion area, which is about a quarter of the size of the existing gardens. Due to some of the site constraints with this scenario, the room for expansion is limited in this option. The rear and northern building overhang opens up into a semi-formal event lawn that is terminated by the existing large oak trees that sit on the knoll of the property, with a working orchard draped over the topography beyond. Looking west from the entrance of the Welcome Center across the ridge line is the large mowed field area spanning the ridge that could be used for practice or pickup games, with that view from the Welcome Center terminating at a small picnic structure beyond. Leaving the picnic shelter and following that curved spine to the south, you travel along the vegetated windbreak and through a field with birdhouses to a sloped oval lawn that is the informal amphitheater. From here, you have a view of the agrarian area and the pond beyond that's framed by that existing vegetated windbreak. Continuing along that spine up the hill to the east, you start to get to the nature-based play zone. We imagine this area being designed to accommodate varied age ranges and abilities, designed into the existing topography to allow for a very unique but adaptive play zone. Moving up past the play area, you reach and move through the Welcome Center and arrive at the existing community garden location. In this option, we're showing the gardens to remain as is, with updated fencing and a proposed material storage area and delivery area to the rear of that, which is just to the plan east behind the gardens. Continuing north along that curved connecting path and across the parking lot, the spine begins to unfurl into that splash pad, which we imagine a water play area that reflects nature, adjusting and contouring with the land, creating a curling, meandering, stream-like splash area that's fun for the whole family and provides a more open space for creative play. Also along the side of the parking are the more active court areas, which includes tennis and or pickleball courts. We're currently showing 6 pickleball courts and 1 tennis, but it could be 8 pickleball courts, it could be 3 tennis courts. We'd love your input as a community on which is more important, a mix or just one. We also have 2 half basketball courts shown for some pickup games. We are proposing a separate restroom facility adjacent to the splash pad for easy access from this side of the parking, so visitors don't have to cross the parking to use. Also, there are additional sidewalk connections, so even though the curved spine crosses the parking, visitors would not necessarily have to cross the parking lot to reach all the components. And I'm going to pass it to Pete with Stitch Design Shop to kind of go through an option of the architecture of the Welcome Center.
Thanks, Emily. The Welcome Center, as Emily mentioned, is kind of on top of the ridge, and it is low slung and agriculturally inspired from its form and its materiality. You'll see some inspiration images on the left of the page, and I'll kind of start with the plan on the bottom. The program of the Welcome Center includes a multi-purpose room that's around 2,000 square feet with a warming kitchen, catering kitchen. Also included are public restrooms that will be accessible from park visitors as well as folks that are renting the multi-purpose space. So it's kind of dual function, and there's some storage as well in that element. The 2 kind of darker images that you see in the plan are cisterns. So we see this kind of low slung roof form being able to capture water, store it on site, and be able to reuse it for the community gardens that are planned north of the Welcome Center and the expanded community gardens that will be planned south. I think one of the main aspects of this particular design is that circular path that Emily was talking about really pulls visitors through this space. So we're starting to create these areas of space under the roof structure. So these outdoor rooms that are not necessarily enclosed, but covered space. So you can understand how you would use the facility if you're just in the park as a visitor, or if you're attending an event at the multipurpose room, you're able to kind of spill out into these areas. The form is agriculturally inspired. The materials are nature-based, and you kind of think of the inside of a tobacco barn or a decommissioned farm implement when you're kind of in this structure. So really taking advantage of that low slung roof form to celebrate the history and the pastoral nature of the land. One thing that I will say is that the architectural design concepts are not mutually exclusive to the site plan. As we develop both of these site plan concepts, we're going to show you another architectural concept in a minute. They could perhaps live in either concept. So I'll pass it back to Emily to get into master plan concept B.
Thanks, Pete. So now I want you to kind of clear your mind, and we're going to start over. So we have images again that represent the look and feel of what we want Ezell Community Park to have for this next option. There's a lot of similarities here with some slight variations. Again, the same goal to really enhance the beauty that is already on the site. So for concept B, we really imagine walking on a gravel path lined with wildflowers next to a farm field with agriculture that contours with the land, lots of space to encourage the continuation of wildlife habitats, using farm style fencing to create an edge between the cultivated and the natural material, natural looking and nature reflective play components, beautiful but functional garden style fencing, open areas for space to play and unwind, quiet reflective spaces to relax, and again, we'll have a small active zone for recreation. Go to the next page. All right, so we have nicknamed this option Sunday Drive. The drive into the park is really meant to feel like an old-fashioned Sunday drive, slow-paced and relaxing, curving up, down, and around the terrain, incrementally revealing the natural beauty and the pastoral landscape of the property. In this option, we are still showing a primary entrance from Mintwood, but we are also showing an option of an additional access point from Highway 51. We're showing this as an alternate access point right now because based on our discussions with NCDOT, we can have direct access now, but it may be converted or removed in the future when they go to install the Highway 51 improvements, which we know are a ways out. So that's why we're showing it there. So back to the design, by pulling the access drive away from the perimeter and into the park, we create a space to preserve and enhance the park edges with wildflower meadows and orchards to emphasize the agricultural history of the property and really begin to set the tone of the park at the edge before you even enter. This also allows us to start to locate park elements where they make the most sense. So we're showing the multi-use field in an existing hay field, the amphitheater where the land is already contoured to a bowl shape, and the welcome center and core active park elements near the ridge and the park entrance. In this scenario, we are proposing to relocate the community gardens to the west side of the park. On this west side, we have ample room for almost unlimited expansion of the garden. The ability to lay out the plots in the most ideal orientation and organization that works for the community, and an opportunity for complementary programming, such as wildflower meadow to attract pollinators, possibly an apiary to keep the pollinators there. We're also proposing a dual purpose structure adjacent to the garden that would not only be used for the storage of farm and maintenance equipment similar to the previous scheme, but this could also have tool storage, material bins, and a restroom facility dedicated to the community garden patrons. We really envision the structure being mostly open air, so it could also provide a shady respite from the sun and a space to for the community gardeners to gather, catch up, and or share gardening tips. You can go to the next slide. So again, this is another slide to kind of show the different types of paths that we'll have. So we're still proposing to meander the multi-use path away from the road and into the park to preserve the existing tree stand along the property frontage and give the multi-use path users a more interesting experience, along with the signalized pedestrian crossing on Highway 51. This would be like a hawk signal, so it would be triggered by a pedestrian that's wanting to cross and turn red for the cars to stop so that the pedestrian could cross safely. We know that this is going to be expanded in the future, and we've already talked with NCDOT about this, and they're on board. The pedestrian paths near the core of the park elements will be the 8-foot wide concrete sidewalk. Then the trails that extend further into the park and away from the core will be the 8-foot width, but the compacted crushed aggregate. We really want you to feel like you're on the farm. And then again, as you enter into the woods, the trails turn to that natural surface hiking trail with boardwalks as needed. And in this scenario, we are not showing a separate parking area for hiking access. We are limiting the corner access points to pedestrians only. And then on the next slide, we'll dive into the park core a little deeper. So the drive and the trails meander to try and preserve and protect the existing habitats while providing opportunities to observe and interact from a distance. The Welcome Center is situated on the ridge along the east-west axis to take advantage of passive solar and wind opportunities. The gathering space looks out on and opens up to an informal event lawn that is just a mowed area with the natural site vegetation left to grow up around the edges and starts to frame your view up to the old oak trees on the top of the knoll. A gravel path extends beyond the building toward the alley crop orchard that contours with the land. And then north of the Welcome Center, we're proposing a vegetated buffer to create a slight separation from the active sports courts, where we have the 2 half basketball courts for fun pickup games with friends and an area for pickleball courts and or tennis. There is a small separate parking lot just north of the tennis courts as well for court use. To the west of the main parking lot is an open mode field that can be used as a multi-purpose field for practice, pickup games, flying a kite, throwing a football or frisbee, having a picnic, or just a place to take the little one to run and let them burn off some energy. South of this area, we have a more formal amphitheater with terrace lawns and that are alternated with seat walls that are focused on a stage or performance platform with the pond in the background. In this scenario, we are proposing a more simplified water play area that is integrated into the bottom of the amphitheater. It'd be more like a flat concrete plaza style area that's edged with the seat wall on one side and has vertical bubblers and sprays. By doing it this way, it becomes more of a multi-use space that can be a spray pad when it's hot, but then can also be used as a gathering space when in cooler temperatures, when it's still nice to be outside and the water's off. At the top of the amphitheater, we are showing a small picnic shelter that would also have an attached restroom that could serve this more family zone on this side of the core. And adjacent to the amphitheater is the nature-based playground, keeping the family-friendly amenities kind of in close proximity to one another, the splash, the play, and the dance with the amphitheater. We imagine this nature-based play area being designed to accommodate varied age ranges and abilities, really inviting you, the adults, to play right alongside your kids if they want you to. We would like this play area to be reflective of the property and be a mini nature adventure with paths that weave in and around and over and under, rising and falling with the land. We really want to use the topography to create a unique and special experience that fosters the opportunity for less prescribed and more creative play. And I'm going to turn it to Adam now to talk through the architecture, a second architecture option.
Thank you, Emily. In this option B, very similar to option A, our design team was really inspired by the sense that this building could take cues from a agricultural vernacular. The site is so beautiful, and so we could almost see these structures starting to replicate barns, but in a more progressive aesthetic. So in looking at the floor plan, one of the big changes you will notice between both of the schemes is that in this version, the bathroom and storage component has been removed and pulled away from the multi-purpose room in the catering kitchen. Again, the intent for that design is to allow both structures to operate independently, which we think from a functionality standpoint makes a lot of sense. But what unites those two structures is this idea of this vegetative trellis that you're seeing up in the upper right-hand image. And so that trellis is a southern-facing trellis, and we can begin to imagine how vegetation and vines and flowers can begin to grow up and onto that trellis, really allowing for the architecture to take on a vegetative state. This concept was inspired by old barn structures that you typically see throughout North Carolina that have been weathered and battered to where their siding has been ripped off and the exposure of the structure is seen. So in this concept, we thought it could be interesting to think about how that exposed structure became a part of the architecture. With this east-west orientation of the multi-purpose room, it really allows for spill out of these outdoor porches on the east and west side that are covered. And so you can imagine having rocking chairs out on that space, either watching the sunrise in the east or watching the sunset in the west. And the materials here, we had imagined them to really have a strong earth tone appearance to them, similar to those images, the colored images that you see stacked vertically onto the left.
All right. Thanks, Adam. Okay, so I know we just threw a lot of information at you. So I'm going to take a quick moment to kind of summarize and recap the two options that we just presented. So in option A, which we called unfurl, that one retains the existing garden location, but offers very little room for a lot of expansion. It proposes a specialty splash pad with an immediately adjacent restroom. It also provides a more informal event lawn instead of an amphitheater, but a more formal outdoor space near the Welcome Center. And then it also is proposing a small dedicated parking lot for hiking. In option B, Sunday Drive, this does relocate the community garden, but offers a much larger footprint for it, while also providing a dedicated restroom, parking area, and space for tools and materials storage, and opportunity for complementary programming. This plan also proposes a more basic splash pad that is part of a more formal amphitheater space and is in closer proximity to the nature play area. The Welcome Center outdoor space is informal and left more natural, and there's no dedicated parking for hiking in this scenario. And I'm going to turn this back over to Bert now to lead you in the interactive session.
All right, so Emily and team, great job going through two what I consider to be very well thought out concepts. Even though the amenities within each concept are similar, the arrangement and some of the approach to the way those things go together is a little bit different. So it took a little bit long for us to go through that. And initially we said we were going to be done around 7. If we need to go a little bit longer than that, we will. So in the interest of time, we're going to share with you a live poll here. Now that you've been introduced to both concepts, we'd like to know which of the 2 concepts you prefer. Option A, unfurl, or option B, Sunday drive. In a few seconds, a pop-up window will appear with our poll question for this evening. Simply select your favorite concept and hit submit. And we'll give everybody a couple of minutes to select that. And there's the poll. So once you have an opportunity to select that, if you've got any specific questions that weren't answered during the presentation or some comments that you'd like to share, please do so in the chat window. We did have quite a few questions that came in that I think our team kind of in the background, David Booth and Katie Lloyd, were helping to answer some of those throughout. So we've got 72% of the precincts have reported, and option A is in the lead right now. All right, we'll give folks a few more minutes. There'll be a few votes that won't get on there. We had a discussion about this as the project team yesterday. We're going to let the residents vote. The project team is going to be hands off. So we won't get 100% tonight. One other thing that you might add to the chat, if there's an aspect of one that you like, but you like the other plan a little bit more, you know, we'd love to hear some of the input there. That's what I like about being able to meet live, because we can have that back and forth. It's a little more difficult to do, you know, through this virtual platform when we have 71 people on a meeting, but we do our best. All right, we're going to give it about 10 more seconds, and then we're going to end it. But right now it looks like option A is eking out a victory. I don't know if it's really a victory. All right, there we go. I think that's all the votes we're going to get. All right. So we had option A there, 30 votes over 25, pretty close. I was very interested to see how that would go. So I'm going to stop sharing those. Let's see. I don't know if you can still see them or not. And then I'm going to have we've got the 2 concepts showing here, and then we're going to look at the chat and see if we had any questions or comments come through. And Katie or David, if you saw anything there, feel free to unmute and let us know.
Yeah, there was a few questions. As you mentioned, a couple of them were answered in the chat. I just wanted to reiterate that the master plan maps will be posted to the public input page. So one of the questions here, it was in relation to option B, the bike and pedestrian path in the bottom left corner appears that it would be closer to the neighboring property than the 100-foot buffer previously mentioned. Could you speak to that, Bert?
Yeah, if it is shown that way, we will make sure to make that correction when we go through and finalize the plan. We will ensure that we have at least 100 feet, if not a little bit more. And then part of exactly where those paths end would be related to, you know, what's on the other side of the road. Potentially, if there's a driveway there, we wouldn't want a trail to intersect with the driveway, so we might shift that a little bit further away. So that's a good question.
There was another question regarding the community gardens, and maybe this is for Emily. Why can we not leave the community gardens where they are in the current location? The gardens are well groomed, and we have been cultivating the soil for the past 10 years. It would not be easily replicated in a new location.
Yeah, so that's why we did show them remaining in one option. Where the gardens currently are on the site really kind of inhibited a lot of well-organized designs because they're kind of right in the middle. So that's why we did one design where we left them where they are and tried to design around, and then one option where we looked at moving them because that west corner of the property, it's also kind of on a slow sloping hill, so there's lots of space to provide a much larger area for them to occur over there, and for the soil to be recultivated. And I think that there could be accommodations made to make sure that if it was moved and developed over there, that the soils would be well cultivated as kind of a gift to relocate them. One of the other things we talked about too is by relocating the gardens to that western location, they could be moved first before any other construction happens on the site. So then that way they can continue to be operated throughout the construction of the park without being disturbed.
All right, Mr. Dunlap, I see you have your hand raised. Did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, just a few questions and then a comment. Mecklenburg County doesn't have a whole lot of fishing ponds. In this particular plan, there's an opportunity to have two. And while I heard someone say that the ponds are not big enough for fishing, why can't they be expanded to allow for fishing?
I can try to answer that the best I can.
Yeah.
The ponds, it's basically across the ridgeline of the park. The south part of the park drains to a protected watershed. So there's very limited, we're very limited in the amount of development we can do in and near the ponds, and then those streams that kind of flow out of them. In addition, we did look at the adjacent surrounding parks, and there's 5 parks within a 5-mile radius of this location that do actually offer fishing.
Okay, that's good. I noticed at the beginning of the presentation, there was a request that there not be any fields of any kind, I guess. Considering the fact that we have limited opportunity to build additional fields, and with the amount of young people in our community, I'm just curious as to why there's only like one open field. And I guess that's based on the request not to have fields, ball fields.
Yes, Commissioner Dunlap, it's partially due to the request, and that was something that was, I guess, originally shared in the master planning exercise that was done in 2010, and then that was kind of reiterated in the study and the input that we received back in October.
Okay, and then the last comment, so that everybody know, I won't be voting on anything. I haven't voted on anything, at least not as of yet. I've been to a number of these things, and I've gone back after parks have been finished, and then sometimes there's disappointment. And part of that stems from the fact that people want a very specific type of park. And then later on, they ask the question, well, is it possible to add this or that? So I would just suggest to the audience listening that they ought to express everything they want, because once the park is designed, there's going to be not many more opportunities to add anything to it later on, because Park and Rec is going to move on to another part. I know we did that with the Eastway Recreational Center, and I'm just amazed at the kinds of stuff that they have in that place. And the community is excited and looking forward to going into it. But that's because they were told, think about what you really want as opposed to what you don't want. And so I just want to encourage people that if there's something that you think might add to this park, you might want to include that while you're designing it. I noticed in the chat that there was somebody that said that they prefer full court basketball to half court basketball. It's things like that that make people feel whether or not they're wanted in a particular park or not. Different ethnicities have different preferences in terms of the activities that they participate in. I noticed that there were no soccer fields, the 2 half-court basketball fields. I know that the Hispanic community is very heavily involved in soccer. In fact, the broader community is now. And then, as we develop parks, if we stop adding certain amenities, it's just going to increase the traffic at other parks. So I just ask that you consider that. But I think it's a great layout, especially given the history of the park and it's being formerly a farm anyway. But I think you guys have done a great job. So I've had my say, and I'm going to get out of the way.
Thank you, Commissioner Dunlap. And I mean, you're right. The comments that we've gotten so far, there were a few about the basketball. There were a number of comments about a dog park in there. And the reason we don't have a dog park shown to date is there's a park just down the road it's actually county property that the town of Matthews is developing. And the first phase of that, which is underway right now, is a large dog park. So we didn't want to necessarily duplicate, but if we feel like, and if we hear from you both tonight and through the website over the next couple of weeks, that there is such a need for dog parks in this area that having, 2 miles down the road from one another is necessary, then, we've got some space here to be able to go and accommodate that. See, Eric had your hand up.
Hey, hello. Thank you so much. I just had a quick question of clarification on the trails that are on the lower side. Are those going to be open to bicycle use as well?
We label them right now, Eric, as hiking trails because with the layout that we've only got right around 2 miles or so. So it wouldn't be a super long ride from a bike standpoint. But a lot of the trails that we have that way, we allow both hiking and biking on. And because this would be a newer facility, it would be much easier to go in and implement where you hike in one direction and you bike in the other direction. That way you don't have places where you have a cyclist that's coming up behind someone who's out for a hike.
I'll add to that, Bert, as well,
Sure.
that we did look at mountain bike trails down in the woods, and the topography is not fun for mountain biking. It's fairly flat out there. So that's why right now we just indicate them as hiking and nature trails because of the length and then the terrain.
Just wanted to get that clarification because I saw on the word map that cycling and biking was like one that popped up quite a bit. So thank you so much for your responses.
All right, looks like we have another hand raised. Reggie Singleton, you want to ask a question?
Absolutely. Greeting, everybody. I'm Reggie Singleton. I'm with Mecklenburg County Public Health. And we've been working with orchards and community gardens from a food security standpoint. That's been one of our major aims. And as it relates to the orchard and the community garden, will these be parceled out for individuals for subsistence purposes, or will that will be available for distribution for people that are in need in other parts of the county?
Yeah, so this is an existing community garden that has individual plots that are rented out. And I believe we would probably remain that way. The idea behind the orchard is it has not been set in stone. So I think there's a great opportunity there to be able to take anything that we're able to harvest there and use from a broader community. Now, if we expand the garden either in its current location, in the location shown on option B, or as someone suggested in the chat, we keep the existing location and we build the other one in option B, then from a production standpoint, we've got a little bit more flexibility in what we could do and potentially supplement and share some of that produce wider than just the folks who were in there doing the work.
Thank you.
Related to that, there was a question in the chat. Intriguing idea to include an orchard. I'm curious about how that would be handled. Would there be a staff to patrol and work? What would happen to the produce? I have a fear that ripening fruit will attract a lot of stinging insects.
Again, that's a detail that we still need to work out for sure. I don't know. I think Alex Rolliter was on here. He could go out and pick the fruit if he needed to. He is the park manager for all of our parks in our south region. But we'll work with that, and it may be that we find some volunteers that live nearby that would kind of oversee that effort. It might be something that we do through our volunteer group, through Park and Recreation, overseen by Karen Howard. Or we may be able to participate with another agency or organization like Reggie's group over in the health department that would be able to help us out there.
Right. The health department, in addition to one of our partners, Cooperative Extension, they have master gardeners who are required to get hours to maintain certifications. And so I've gotten a commitment from from one of our partners with Cooperative Extension to assist with that with the master gardeners. So I think the harvesting and the distribution would be a fundamental interest there to ensure that we're able to get those in the hands and into the stomachs of people who need to be consuming the local fresh produce.
Yeah, that's a great point.
There's a volunteer or two in the chat.
We already have hands raised to volunteer. That's great.
All right, well, we might not get to all the questions, but there's definitely a couple more. And this one's for the design team. On option B, can the road be connected to allow entry and exit as desired, favoring a right turn only?
So in part of the conversations we've had with NCDOT, that would be most likely the case when the Highway 51 roadway improvements happen, that if we had that direct connection to Highway 51, like we have shown, that alternate access point, it would most likely be converted to a right-in, right-out only when those improvements happen. As of right now, NCDOT has indicated that we could have a full movement access there. There would most likely be some road improvements on Highway 51 that we would have to participate in to make that happen, though.
Thanks, Emily. There's a question about the birdhouses. Will the birdhouses be usable by birds? I was thinking they'd probably be turned off by the amount of people so close to their homes.
That's another opportunity that we kind of discussed internally as potential opportunities for partnership with local schools, as different types of learning opportunities for kids, or partnerships with others to kind of help maintain, study. All wherever we end up locating them would be in locations where they'd be ideal for that type of habitat that birdhouse is designed for.
Okay, Emily, this one's probably also for you. Which option has the most natural or undeveloped space?
They're actually very similar. We've concentrated the kind of most developed space to generally the same area in both concepts, just because of the fact that we are trying to respond to the land with where we were putting certain items. So you can kind of see the natural vegetated windbreak is that darker line of trees on both scenarios. That's already existing there and we're planning to keep. So I mean, both options are very, very much the same in amount of space.
All right, this question's for Stitch. On A, did I see lawn planters outside the building? Perhaps they could be hydroponic gardens instead of just plants?
Yeah, we were exploring the different planter opportunities, both along the walkway and in the connector pieces between the existing community garden and the expanded. And I don't know if you noticed, but there were some areas where the roof was kind of peeled back to either a transparent material or left wide open so that we could bring some of that vegetated elements under the structure. But yeah, that would be an opportunity for sure.
Okay, David, this one's for you. I think you've already answered it in the chat, but I'll ask it here as well. Is there an opportunity to work with NCDOT on further connections, extension of the multi-use trail beyond the park and further into the surrounding community to lessen the need for cars?
That is a yes. NCDOT has indicated they were working at the request of the town of Mint Hill to extend that multi-use path down 51, so people can commute down 51 by bike. So that is potentially going to go to the left and right of the park as they go through the project.
And there was another question about land acquisition. Is there a chance to acquire that rectangular land that juts into the park?
We will always continue to take offers and look at things at this time. Right now, I know that parcel has a cell tower on it and some easements attached. So in the intent, if it does come available, we can incorporate as part of the park, but at this time it's not planned. If we did need to, we could probably go back and update the master plan to incorporate that in the future.
All right, I'm not sure who wants to take this, but is there room for disc golf in either plan?
I'll take that one. We work a lot with Charlotte Disc Golf Club in the Charlotte area with a lot of our parks. And so this is definitely one we would approach to review with them. We'd have to look at the options and see if it works best for them. They are very, I'll say particular, but they do like to make sure their courses are both for those the beginner and those that are advanced. So we'll definitely take that option and bring them in to walk through the woods. But their intent right now is to leave this facility more natural and try to leave our disc golf facilities in other locations.
There's also 2 other disc golf courses that are within the 5-mile radius of this park.
Okay, are cisterns part of both plans? It is a great idea.
I think we only have the cistern shown in the one concept there. And that probably has to do with the size of the roof of that particular concept and its proximity to the community garden. But I'll let Pete expand on that.
Yeah, I think it could be deployed in option B building as well, but we weren't showing it mainly just due to the proximity to the community garden, but not that you couldn't use that water for other things up there, but it could be incorporated since it has a shed roof.
Okay, what considerations have been given to minimizing additional cut-through traffic for Mintwood Drive?
this has been in conversation with the town of Mint Hill, and they understand that this is something that's occurring. We've not had any indication from them on what action will be taken or what they plan to do. They just understand that there are people coming through neighborhoods that need to get to 51 and other joining neighborhoods. We don't know if anything we can do as part of our project that would be outside of our perimeter that we could do to help improve that.
Okay, I'm gonna ask one more question, and then if I've missed anyone's question or anyone wants to speak up after this one, raise your hand or just unmute. There's not too many of us. What is the difference in the amount of parking, and is it possible to have 2 parking areas on option B?
So option A, the main parking lot is about 145, and option B, the combined main parking lot and the smaller parking adjacent to the courts equals about 130. So they're very similar in the amount of parking in the main core of the park. Obviously, we weren't showing that additional parking separate for hikers in B, but that's totally an option that we can add in B. Some of those pieces are mix and match. So if that's something that people like, that kind of separate parking just for hikers on the trails, we can totally add that.
Katie, I'd like to answer a quick question from Len. He talked about the community gardens no longer going to be able to use their plots. No, I think the intent, we've had a lot of discussion with our design team, is that regardless of where they're located in each plan, we would try to stage that. So if option A is kind of the way we go, but we try to keep that open and maintained for the gardeners to utilize those plots while we're in construction. If we go with an option B, we definitely would try to set those garden plots up before we take the other ones offline.
So I think we've gotten through a number of the comments. I did see one comment on there. It was more of a concern about preserving the open space here and maybe keeping it the way it is and not improving it. And what I would say to that is this is a park that's been, Lee mentioned earlier, has been envisioned for well over 10 years at this point. And I think the design team has done a really good job of working with the site, coming up with 2 options that keep a lot of the development, I would say, of the site very, very small, and working with the lay of the land and trying to preserve the character of the land as much as possible through here. Also saw a couple of comments about the height of the fence around the community garden. We will make sure that we mirror that if we do replace that fence, either if it's in its existing location or it's or another location or both. I did see somebody said that they can't wait to have in-person meetings again. They gave Zoom a thumbs down, but they did thank us for our efforts. We appreciate that. There's a quick question about cost, and we haven't really gotten in from a budget standpoint on cost between A or B, Emily, but I'm going to imagine that with the amenities being so similar between each, there wouldn't be a tremendous amount, but I don't know if you guys have thought about, potentially other costs like grading or utilities or anything like that.
We've looked at real rough order of magnitude costs on both options just to see where we were, and they are very comparable. I think it was pretty minor, the difference in cost between the 2 options.
I saw one question earlier, and I spent a few minutes trying to drum up an answer. There was a comment about the proximity of the restrooms on option B to the tennis courts. And it sounded like maybe a concern about the distance between those 2. I did a quick measurement. We're about 150 feet if you follow the direct paths that are shown there today to get to the center of the tennis court around the basketball courts. Similar distance, maybe even shorter than shown on option A.
And I don't know if it was confusing. There are restrooms as part of that welcome center. So if you're on the courts in option B, you wouldn't have to go to that restroom near the amphitheater. There's restrooms as part of the welcome center in both options.
Will there be wireless internet access at this park? Given the changes we've had with COVID and children, you know, they might want to use their iPad, or parents, will there be access so they can maybe do work or homework, or, you know, while they watch their kids or play?
That's a great question. That is something that we are looking into doing, not only at our new parks like this park, but also at a number of our existing parks, even some of our smaller kind of local neighborhood parks, for that very reason. And so we know that if we do that, it would be much easier to do it at a larger facility like this, because we would have some of that interior storage space where you have some of the IT cabinets and things like that. It's a little bit more protected, and it's a little easier to go in and integrate the other things that you would need to have. You know, we would need to have some easily to access power outlets for folks to be able to plug in if they're using it for that. But I would say our goal would be, when we build the pavilion here, that we would have public Wi-Fi as part of that. All right. Unless there are any more questions, I will roll to our final slide. So we've shared a lot of new information with everybody tonight in a very short amount of time. We will soon post the recording for tonight's meeting, along with the presentation slides and the 2 concepts on the Ezell Park Public Input website. And if I know Katie, she will post that in the chat, or David, in just a minute. This will give everybody an opportunity here, and those who are unable to attend the meeting, an opportunity to go and review what we shared tonight. We'll provide a survey to continue to gather votes on the concepts you prefer, and a comment area where you can provide more specific information like you did in the chat this evening. We're going to keep the survey open for the next 2 to 3 weeks. At that time, our design team, led by Stimmel, will begin developing the final master plan, provide us with an overall project budget estimate, and we'll begin to identify those elements of the design that will be part of the initial construction project. This will lead into the rezoning process necessary through the town of Mint Hill. The rezoning process will include an additional community workshop where we will share the updated master plan for Ezell Park. Once the rezoning process is complete, our design team will begin work on the final construction drawings. Our goal is to bid the project and begin construction in early 2022 and complete the project in spring of 23. If you have any questions that aren't answered on the project website tonight, feel free to reach out to our contact shown here, James Williams, who was a planner at Mecklenburg County Park and Recreation, and David Booth, the project manager with Mecklenburg County Asset and Facility Management. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. I think we had 71 was the high number that I saw, so that's a fantastic turnout. We look forward to your continued involvement in the project, and can't wait to celebrate the opening of Ezell Park with you on site. So thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.